Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So, when I first started seriously getting into collecting video games, 14 or 15 years ago, my resources were a few online database websites where, you'd look up and see certain systems and be like, oh, look at that system, I really want to own that one someday, and oh, look at that one, it looks pretty cool, but oh man, it's so rare, I'll never own one of those. Well, I finally picked up one of my holy grails that I've wanted for a very long time and never thought I would own one. This system is very rare, it's expensive. The collector's value on this thing is incredibly high, but also the gamer's value is very high because there are some very worthwhile games on this system. Even if they are a bit pricey, this system is totally worth it beyond just getting it because it's rare. But I'm sure some of you may have an idea of what console this may be when I mention the fact that it's the very first 32-bit game home console in the world, even predating the Amiga CD32. And that console is the FM Towns Marty. So this was exclusively released in Japan back in 1991, and this was essentially a home console version of the FM Towns computers by Fujitsu in Japan. So this was able to play an entire library of computer games on a home console. It even has a floppy disk drive right here for certain games that would require floppy disk drives, and then the built-in CD drive right here, which was also one of the first consoles ever to have a built-in CD-ROM drive. So this console did very poorly in Japan. It sold really bad. It also had a bad stigma attached to it because FM Towns sort of had this kiddie... It was tied to kids games, kids software for computers, so that's one of the main reasons that speculated that this console sold very poorly, as well as the equivalent of about a $700 US price tag for this thing. This is the first model that was released in 1991, and then around 1993 and 1994 they released a second model, which was basically the same thing internally, just the outside was a gray casing, a darker gray with a yellow button. So this is the first model. It's a bit rarer than the second model. Now, this is the kind of console that you can go on eBay. There'll always be plenty available on eBay. However, a lot of them are broken and damaged because this is also very... well known for breaking down and having a slew of different problems that cause this thing to stop working. So in a way, it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. So hopefully mine lasts for many years to come. But what do you say? I just show you quickly the controller. So this here is the small little controller. And that thing is heavy, by the way. That is a heavy console. Almost as heavy as the first Xbox. The controller here is very small. That's another criticism about the console. I actually don't mind it that much. It's very simple. You just got two buttons, a shoulder button, which is used to change resolutions in some games, and a D-pad start, and two different start buttons down here. Controller is very simple. I kind of like it, but I know the thing that I'm most excited about is not to own this thing just because it's rare. That's not the reason I bought it. I bought it because I wanted a home console version of the FM Towns to play games such as Splatterhouse. Okay, so this is like one of the, I hate to use this word again, but this is a holy grail for game collectors. I mean, this is a highly sought after game for the FM Towns because it's it's basically a pixel perfect, 100%, I'd say like 99.9% arcade perfect conversion of the arcade Splatterhouse. I've never played the original Splatterhouse. I've never played the TurboGrafx version, and the only way that people in the US would really be able to play the original Splatterhouse is if you played the TurboGrafx version, and I never played it in the arcade. But I did play a heck of a lot of Splatterhouse 2 on the Sega Genesis when I was younger, and I played a bit of Splatterhouse 3, so I was always dying to try this one out, but I never wanted to play the watered-down TurboGrafx port. Now the bad thing is that if you want the original FM Towns Marty version of this, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and not only that, but it's incredibly hard to find. If you're looking for a cheaper alternative, you can actually just buy the new Splatterhouse game that came out on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. You can actually unlock the original Splatterhouse arcade as well as Splatterhouse 2 and 3, but I have heard that the arcade version that you can unlock of this game in the new Splatterhouse has some audio issues when it comes to the emulation on the newer game. So this is like as close as you can get to the arcade, and I absolutely love it. It's uncensored, obviously, because it's the arcade version. So there's gore, and there's blood, and there's disgusting sound effects, and the music is just so eerie and well done. And as I played through after I was done playing through this game, I went onto YouTube and I watched the TurboGrafx version. I mean, it's a cheap alternative, but I have to say, it does not compare to the brilliance of this version here. I mean, the arcade version is just so good. I grew up on horror movies and such, and monsters and everything, so when I was playing Splatterhouse 2 when I was younger, I mean, it kind of blew my mind on the violence, and if I had played this, like the arcade version when I was younger, I can tell you this would have been one of my favorite games of all time. Just because the level design, the monster design is just so unique, so creepy. This game is a lot of fun. It's very simple. You know, you're just picking up weapons, and there are certain strategies that you have to use over and over to defeat certain bosses to make it easier. But oh my god, have I enjoyed my time with Splatterhouse for the FM Towns Marty. Alright, and next is another highly sought after game for the Marty. And this is known as being the only available home console version of this game anywhere. You can't play a home console version of this game except on the Marty. It was released in the arcades, and this is a conversion and a port of the arcade version. It's a sequel to a Sega Genesis shoot-'em-up known as Truxton. And this is Tatsujin O, also known as Truxton 2. So yes, not a lot of people even know that there was a sequel to Truxton that was in the arcades and then was ported to the FM Towns Marty. Now, this is not 100% conversion. Unfortunately, it loses a level of parallax scrolling that goes on in the backgrounds of the game, so visually it's not as appealing, and also there's some cropping to the aspect ratio, so some of the top half of the screen is a bit cut off, so enemies will actually shoot at you before you can even see them on screen. But if you can get past those two downsides, this is an almost perfect conversion of the arcade, putting those two things aside. This game is incredibly difficult. It's actually known as being one of the hardest shooters of all time. The first level or two may lead you to believe that it's easier than you had anticipated, but this game will kick your butt once you start getting into some of the later levels. And it's the kind of game where it's one hit, you're dead, you lose all your power-ups, and in some areas in this game, if you die and lose your power-ups, it's almost impossible to advance, because it's just so hard to recover after you've lost all your power-ups. But it's an incredible game, it's very fast-paced, there's tons of enemies on screen, the explosions are very impressive, there's not a lot of slowdown going on, the ships are very detailed, the music is a standout staple to this game, because most shooters, and if you just looked at the gameplay for this, you would imagine that it would have like hard rock, hard techno soundtrack. It's sort of like this laid-back, very relaxed, kind of cheery, in a way, soundtrack. I mean, it is unlike anything you've heard before for a shooting game, and I think it kind of fits. It adds a really unique personality to it. The weapons are incredible once you've powered them all up. I mean, there's nothing more satisfying than getting a fully powered up weapon in a game such as this and just destroying everything on screen. The bosses are by far one of the most challenging and biggest highlights of Tatsujin O. Unfortunately, it's another incredibly rare game, if not the most sought after and expensive and rare game on the FM Towns Marty in the entire collection. So shoot 'em up fans, I'd say it's worth it if you can track it down, but just keep in mind the price of admission. Alright, and next is a dual game compilation that is kind of unknown to people outside of Japan because, well, it never saw release for the series outside of Japan, and that's the Genocide Series. Previously, this was released on consoles such as, well, Genocide 1 was released on the Sharp 68000 and the PC Engine, and then Genocide 2 is released on the Sharp as well as the Super Famicom. And then the Marty collection here is sort of a remaster, especially for the first game. It received a huge visual and music overhaul, and then the second game also had some overhauls to the graphics and the music. But this is a very fast-paced, a bit challenging, and a little bit of a simplistic action side-scroller beat-em-up where you play as this mech that just goes around slashing everything with its sword. I mean, it seems a little bit brainless because, at least to what I've figured out from trying to play the games, there's no way to like block or really avoid some of the damage, so it's sort of like this mindless beat 'em up that's very fast-paced. It's a little bit hard to see what's coming on screen because you're moving so fast sometimes, but the music's very impressive. Graphically, it's pretty good. I mean, it's a challenging game. I've struggled to get past like the second or third level on both games here. But it's a good compilation that's exclusive to the Marty, and it's fun if you're a fan of action, mech, beat-em-up kind of games. And here is another exclusive for the Marty, and that's Megamorph. This is actually the sequel that only appeared on the Marty to a game known as Nova Storm, which appeared on consoles such as the Sega CD and the 3DO and others. I have the 3DO version. It's an FMV shooting game. So I like these kind of games. I know it's definitely not for everybody, but it's one of those ones where the backgrounds are pre-rendered and it's like a moving image, like an FMV video, but you actually interact with the background. So, you know, the boss will be an FMV, like mountain giant thing, and you have to shoot that and avoid his attacks. It's a very hard game because I can't get past the second level. The second level's boss, you're like weaving through these trees, but as you can see here, it's like so hard to tell which way they're going to come from, so I'm still practicing, still trying to get past that, but I like these kind of games. I was a pretty big fan of Nova Storm, and this is an exclusive for the Marty, so I figured I had to pick it up. And then there's one more game which is not an official game. The seller didn't include this in his auction description, but he included a burnt copy of Puyo Puyo. I am a huge fan of Puyo Puyo. I played the heck out of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine back in the day on the Sega Genesis, so it's nice to have a very plain Jane, very crisp looking, good sound version of Puyo Puyo for the FM Towns Marty. I love the series. It's definitely probably like my second favorite puzzle series of all time. I just love the mechanics behind it. Now it should be noted that yes, this is a burnt CDR. The FM Towns Marty has no copyright protection, so you can burn a CDR with a ROM on it and pop it in your Marty and you're good to go. Not my route, however, you know, for people that are interested in doing stuff like that, it is an option. So, I mean, there's still a lot of games for the Marty that I want to collect for. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to collect for this console because it's going to be fun to get a title here and there, and there's a list of games that I'm looking forward to eventually owning. There's a lot of great arcade conversions, such as Kyukyoku Tiger or Tiger Heli. There's a great arcade port, which is almost, it's like pixel perfect, and there's a special arranged soundtrack only for the FM Towns Marty version. Raiden Densetsu, you know, it's a perfect arcade port, you know, just as good as the Raiden Project's conversion that's on the PlayStation 1 with a new arranged soundtrack. There's Ray Zanber, which is the first game in that shoot-'em-up series that only appears on the Marty, the first game in the series. There's an awesome conversion of Shadow of the Beast, which takes the PC Engine CD soundtrack and puts it in this version, but this version has like updated animations and colors and monster graphics. I mean, it's a better looking version, and I'm looking forward to trying that out. There's a lot of other conversions of games. Unfortunately, they're all going to be hard to track down and find and play, but I'm, you know, excited for the future of, you know, once in a while picking up a game for my Marty, and I don't know, I haven't bought a rare console like this in many, many years, so this is something kind of new and exciting for me, and just new games this generation just haven't really been doing it for me, so I find a lot more excitement in picking up games, you know, game consoles like the Marty and buying games for that. So hopefully you guys are, you know, hopefully you can sense my excitement for finally having one of my most wanted consoles of all time. So anyway, guys, before this goes on too long, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.